What's the difference between a hazard, peril, and risk? We're going to talk about these three interesting concepts within insurance today. What's up? You're watching Tito Talks, non-life insurance discussions once again with me, your favorite Tito Miguel, who loves to make non-life insurance discussions easier to understand for both agents and clients. Magandang Wednesday afternoon or evening po sa inyo. Thank you so much for tuning in once again to your favorite Tito to talk about another interesting lesson when it comes to non-life insurance. And for today, we're actually going to dissect three very specific things. These are the terms known as hazards, perils, and risks. Well, Tito, why do we need to talk about these things? What's so important about them? One of the more common beginner mistakes that a lot of new agents do is that they misuse these terms, especially if they think they know a lot about insurance already. Hazards, risks, perils. And one of the biggest risks you run, or one of the biggest problems you could run into when talking about hazards, risks, and perils is the possibility that your customer may not know what they are. They'll see these terms in their policy: hazards, risks, and perils. They'll see them all the time, especially when they buy a lot of policies from you or when they regularly buy their policies from you. You cannot escape the potential, the possibility that your customer may one day ask you, ano ba ang risk? Ano ba ang hazard? Ano ba ang peril? Which means you have to be ready to be able to define these terms in easier to understand language to your clients. Not to mention, they're also included in the insurance licensure exam. You may encounter some of these concepts along the way. So it does really do you a big favor to get a good grasp of how these three things interact inside the policy, what makes them different from one another, and when and where you should use these terms. So let's start with the simpler one then, shall we? Now, peril is considered as a noun that refers to something that causes damage, something that causes loss, something that damages the actual asset you're trying to insure, whether that be a person, whether that be a house, whether that be a business, whether that be a car. A peril is something that could damage these things, but they're not necessarily things per se. They could be events, they could be catastrophes, they could be specific circumstances or conditions that actually damage the insurable interest. And a good example of a peril is known as is fire. Fire is quite a popular peril, especially in fire insurance. That's why they call it fire insurance. Eh? So when you're talking about fire as a peril, you all know, if you haven't watched our discussion on fire insurance, you can check out that link here. Fire is considered as a peril, not as a loss. Losses refer to the actual damages that you incur. Fire is what actually causes these losses, which means different perils could have different types of losses along with them because of the unique nature of some of these perils. Let's talk about fire for starters. Now, fire can cause specific types of losses to the property. And let's start with property insurance. Usually, fire could cause any number of sorts of losses, such as smoke damage. Yes, if you have a lot of fire, there's going to be a lot of smoke, which could cause smoke damage, which is not exactly burn damage, because when you talk about burn damage, you're talking about scorching. So you have smoke damage, you have scorching, and you'll be surprised to know there's also water damage, which could be caused by fire as a peril. Ano sabi mo, Miguel? Fire is causing water damage? Nahihibang ka na ba? Not exactly, Miguel. Hear me out. Now, take note, fire as a peril is determined as the proximate cause of the loss. Now, when you have a fire in your property, one of the first things you do is actually call for the fire brigade, the actual department or the actual group of people who will put out the fire. Part of what these firefighters do is use hoses and use water and various extinguishing agents to put out the fire. Sometimes they may use too much water, or the water could be too strong, and they could damage other areas of the house with the water. Now, is is fire brigade activity an exact peril? No. Fire brigade activity is considered a loss, especially if they cause damage to the house. Now, what could be the proximate cause of the fire brigade's damage? Is it the fire? Absolutely. So the water damage caused by the fire brigade can be attributed to the fire as a proximate cause. Therefore, the fire caused or the fire is directly connected with the actual water damage loss. So that makes things a lot interesting and a lot clearer for you. Fire is the peril, scorching, smoke damage, and even water damage are the types of losses that actually come from perils. Which brings us back to our earlier point. Perils are what causes losses. And if you take a look at your insurance policy, you'll notice that the coverage section of your insurance policy does not specifically mention a lot of losses, but they specifically mention perils because it is to be understood that the losses coming from these perils are going to be covered by the insurance policy. Now, hazards are rather interesting because they're not just like perils. Hazards are not exactly things, tangible things. They could be tangible things, and at the same time, hazards could also be events, conditions, situations that are defined as having the potential to increase the likelihood of loss. That means, in short, hazards make things more problematic. Hazards increase the chance of a peril causing a loss. Now, you may have had more encounter with hazards than perils, especially when you deal with a lot of toys. Some toys come in boxes, and some of these toys may come with very, very small parts. And when a toy comes with very, very small parts, you'll see that on the box, and the box will say choking hazard, right? And this is one of the more accurate definitions or usages of the term hazard. Why is it considered a hazard, Miguel? It's a toy. It's not supposed to be dangerous to children. I know. But hear me out, Miguel. When you talk about a choking hazard, that the term hazard refers to a condition or a specific thing or a specific characteristic about the toy that could increase the chances of a loss happening. What is that loss? That loss is, or what is that peril? That peril is choking. So, because a toy has small parts, by the very nature of the part itself, it is small. Therefore, it is more likely that the child could put it in their mouth and swallow it, therefore causing them to choke. That's why it's considered a hazard. And it's considered a physical hazard because it's in the very nature. It's in the very physical characteristics of the toy itself. Now, when you go to insurance, the discussion is the same, is on the same line. So when you're talking about certain hazards, let's say, for example, gasoline stations, they have a very, very big physical hazard, which is the fact that they deal with a highly flammable substance on a daily basis. Is that wrong? Not necessarily. Is it risky? Is it dangerous? Absolutely. That's why we use the term hazard. When we say that something is a hazard or there is a hazard, that means certain characteristics, certain attributes, certain situations may contribute or may increase the likelihood that something bad is going to happen. And finally, we save the most complicated one for last, the term risk. It's complicated because you have two specific usages of risk in insurance. One of these usages is risk as uncertainty. Risk is mostly defined as uncertainty regarding loss. You're not sure if a loss is going to happen, with or without the presence of hazards. You can't really say for sure. Is someone going to fall through this manhole? Is this house really going to catch on fire? Is this car really going to bump in other cars within the full same insured year? You can't really know for sure because you can't tell the future. there is a risk. And insurance companies operate around this concept of risk. They encounter the risk, they mitigate the risk, they calculate the risk, and assign premiums through the perspective of the insured so that they can get benefits because of this uncertainty. The insurance doesn't know if a loss will occur. The insured doesn't know if a loss will occur. So therefore, it is a risk. And a risk is something that an insurance company takes before they insure someone. The second definition of risk refers to the actual object that you're trying to insure. Yes, underwriters could refer to the asset being insured as a risk. This could be a car, this could be a property, this could be a house, this could be a ship, this could be a certain amount of cargo. These can all be referred to as risks. So don't get confused, especially when you talk to your claimsmen, if they use the term risk to refer to the actual object being insured. So you've got these three terms. Let's summarize all of that for you. Hazards actually are situations that increase the potential of perils causing losses. Therefore, perils are the objects, situations, things, catastrophes, occurrences that could cause loss to the insured or to the asset. Now, risk is the uncertainty revolving around this possibility. Is a risk going to take place? I don't know. Is a risk going or is this peril going to cause damage? I don't know either. And we're going to operate around how much we know to assign a premium and to create a policy so that the insurance and the insured have an agreement. We're both not sure something's going to happen, but if in case it does, here's what we're going to do. And that's what insurance is all about. Now, thank you so much for joining us today. Here's our question for the day, which should introduce us to our next topic. And I do believe I've got another interesting one for you. If you fall into a manhole, I know, pretty stupid, right? If you fall into a manhole while walking across the street, is it the government's fault for not telling you there's an open manhole? Or is it your fault for not watching where you're going? Now, let me know what you think in the comments. I do believe we'll have some very interesting answers along the way. And this coming Friday, we're going to talk about the answer and we're going to talk about the corresponding concept that revolves around this question. So I hope you stay tuned for that. So thank you once again for joining us today. This is your favorite Tito Miguel, always saying, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.